In the heart of Konoha, a village hidden in the foliage, was the home of the Uzumaki family. Naruto sat in the living room, watching TV. In recent years of the world, technology has stepped far forward. Now there was a lot of equipment in every house. Hinata was in the kitchen, cooking something, periodically glancing at the oven. Their children were playing in the street. Everyone knew whose children they were, so Naruto and Hinata didn't have to worry about their safety. There was the sound of a door opening, and children's voices came from the hallway. "Mom! Daddy! Doggy! They're so fluffy! Doggy!" Two children ran into the room and immediately jumped on their father. Boruto wore a black jacket and pants with purple stripes. His eyes sparkled excitedly when he wanted to say something. Himawari ran up and jumped after him. She was dressed in a cream blouse and black tights, over which there was a pink skirt. Naruto folded in half as the children jumped onto his chest. "Ho!" Hinata looked up from her cooking and looked at the action unfolding. Naruto regained his breath and removed his son and daughter from his chest. They were still excited and jumping up and down with impatience. Jonin wondered what was going on. "Why are you so active?" He patted their hair. Boruto pouted, and Himawari smiled and began to cuddle with the blonde. But as soon as they heard the question, they were excited again. "There! Doggy! So white! Puffy! And dear! First of all, calm down." Naruto smiled. Boruto sighed and exhaled slowly. Then he began to speak more calmly. "There was a boy there. He also has purple stripes on his cheeks. He carried a puppy with him. White." At last the boy could not stand it any longer and exclaimed, "Puffy!" Himawari supported her brother. "Ah," Naruto realized. He glanced at Hinata and saw that she was giggling softly. "This is Inuzuka." "Inuzu what?" The children did not understand. "A family that has dogs." The blonde explained in a way that was understood. "These are special dogs used by ninjas." Hinata approached. She had already prepared everything, so she decided to come closer. Himawari immediately asked to be held. "Why don't we have a dog?" Himawari asked from her mother's arms. "We're ninjas." "Yes." "Why?" "We want a dog. We want a dog." Boruto began to chant. "Doggy! Doggy! Doggy!" Himawari continued. They kept repeating, gradually raising their voices. Soon they were just trying to shout over each other. "That's enough! Now it's a lively lunch. And then we'll think about it." Naruto interrupted the rally. Hinata shook her head with a smile and carried Himawari to the table. Boruto follows his mother. The rest of the day passed as usual. When Naruto was lying in bed waiting for Hinata, she entered the room and lay down next to her husband. She was wearing a light nightie, so her figure was clearly visible to the blonde. "Don't!" Hinata blushed and removed her husband's hand, which he had used to get under her nightie. "Why?" Naruto was indignant. "We haven't done this for a long time. The children are opposite, after all." The brunette removed his hand again. "And we're quiet." Naruto hugged his wife. "No," Hinata said flatly. "What do you think about the idea of getting a dog?" She hastened to change the subject. "I'll think about it." Naruto snuggled up to his wife and closed his eyes. At the same moment, he fell into the inner world. In front of him was a giant gate. At the moment, they were wide open, and a huge fox with 9 tails lay in the darkness. As soon as Naruto stepped into the cage, the fox opened his eyes. "He came!" He grinned with his toothy mouth. "What, didn't you give it?" "Shut up, Kurama!" Naruto shouted to his old friend. "Oh you! It is necessary to show who is the master in the house. I had to grab her and show her her place." The kitsune continued. "Shut up!" A large wave hit Biju's face. "Ugh!" Kurama began to spit. After that, he sat down and crossed his paws. "Come on, I'm kidding. By the way, I know the solution to your problems. Which ones? The guy didn't understand. Both of them. The fox grinned. He waved his paw, and a golden ball flew into the blonde. He stood for a few minutes and stared into the void. Then his gaze made sense. His face then turned red and his nose bled. What was that? Naruto asked, stammering. Kushina was very hot. The fox grinned again. That will solve both of your problems. No, she won't do that. The blonde shook his head. So are you the head of the family or not you? Show your power! I'll try. And then I'll go to rub this matter with my relatives. And Kurama's consciousness disappeared. The fox himself fell asleep again. In the morning, Naruto kissed Hinata on the cheek after breakfast and said that he would not be in the village for a couple of days. She was surprised, because yesterday he did not need to go anywhere, but nodded. The blonde man had not been in the village for almost a week. On the 6th day, he appeared on the doorstep, tired, but very happy. Behind him was a weighty scroll that looked like a summoning scroll. Hinata sat in the living room, darning clothes. As soon as she heard the door open, she ran to meet her husband. What do you have, dear? Hinata asked when she saw the scroll. Are the children at home? Naruto asked a strange question. No, Hinata replied uncomprehendingly. Hanabi has them. We are alone until the middle of the day. Great. Naruto then quickly approached his wife's face and kissed her passionately. I'm waiting for you upstairs. He whispered and went to the stairs. Hinata nodded quietly, blushing heavily. When she entered the bedroom, she saw Naruto standing in front of an open scroll. The fuin on it formed a complex network, in the middle of which there was a section with one large symbol. The scroll took up most of the floor in the bedroom, and the only free space was near the wall. Hinata stood there while Naruto looked at the fuin. What is this, Naruto-kun? She asked. The signs were completely unfamiliar to her. That's what will color our lives, Naruto replied. He folded a long series of seals and placed his hands on the scroll. Clouds of smoke appeared, and when they dissipated, there was a medium-sized box in the center of the symbol network. Naruto walked over and took it in his hands. He indifferently walked over the fuin, which had become faded. Now you need to undress, the blonde man said. But Naruto-kun, Hinata blushed at the words. Alone with Naruto, she is still the same modest girl she was at 16. Come on, he said imperatively. The kunoichi's movements were stiff, as if she was in some distant place. Gradually, she began to unzip the jacket. She fell at her feet. Hinata squeezed her eyes shut and clutched the hem of her blouse with her hands. You want the full story, without censorship? Then rush to my Patreon. For just $4 a month, you unlock over 380 episodes of epic fan stories, from fandoms you've never even heard of. From classics like Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, to One Punch Man, DxD, and tons of taboo crossovers found nowhere else. Link in the description, or pinned comment. Subscribe now, and drown in unfiltered adult heat. One sub, the entire NSFW multiverse, in your pocket. With a quick movement, she pulled it over her head, exposing her large chest underneath. Naruto watched as her pants slowly folded into a pile on the ground. Now she was wearing only lilac satin panties and a bra. Her hands reached behind her back, and soon her bra fell to the floor. Naruto admired his wife's firm chest, which were now free of fabric. The advantages of youth kept her daring chest proudly raised. Slowly, her panties went down her legs until she was naked in front of him. Panting with exertion, Hinata stopped her movements. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Now put it on, honey, Naruto said. Hinata picked up a bundle of things that Naruto had placed on the table beside her. She opened the box and saw what looked like clothes. She took it out without bothering to look any further. Naruto watched as Hinata inspected the suit. Her hands glided over the rubber material it was made of. "Do you want me to wear this?" she asked. Naruto stared into her eyes. "Yes, it will make our children happier." Hinata swallowed, her hands pulling down the zipper on the back of the suit. She tried to step cautiously inside the suit. Kunoichi almost lost her balance, and was forced to sit on the hard floor. The material was tight, and she had to gradually, centimeter by centimeter, lift the tight rubber up her leg. The opening for her legs was quite narrow, and it was only with great effort that she was able to make any progress. She exhaled in annoyance as her fingers finally touched the rubber end. She tried to move her toes, but it was difficult as the material pressed them together. Naruto sat and watched, enjoying his wife struggling to fit into the outfit. The second leg was just as difficult as the first, when the rubber stuck to the skin. Sweat was now covering the brunette's body, slowly dripping down her chest and stomach until her other leg finally slipped into her pant leg. Hinata had to use both hands while moving her pelvis to slide further inside the suit. Finally, the rubber was pulled over her. Her body was now half clad in black rubber. Afraid that if she stopped, she wouldn't be able to continue, Hinata immediately continued. She stretched the tight suit up and down her stomach. With a grunt, she was able to stretch the rubber so that both of her chests were under the elastic fabric. Now she tried to put her hands into the rubber sleeves of the overall. It took a considerable amount of effort before her hands were in the pouches at the end of each sleeve. Now Naruto could see the girl in rubber clothes. Still sitting on the ground, she was covered from the tips of her toes to her neck in a thick black cloth. The black color contrasted with the kunoichi's pale skin. The lines of her calf and thigh muscles were clearly outlined against the rubber around them. The girl's already thin waist was even tighter. This made her take a few short breaths. Each of her ribs was easily visible under the black cloth. While her chests were pressed tightly against her body, each one was encased in its own rubber pouch. Every time she moved in the suit, he would make the material rub against her nipples. Hinata tried to move her fingers, but found herself unable to do so. The rubber tightly squeezed the hand, not allowing even a simple seal to be folded. I don't think I can zip it up," Hinata told her husband, trying not to look him in the eye. Naruto walked over to Hinata. "You need to roll over," he said. With some effort, Hinata was able to roll over on the floor. Naruto reached down, slowly zipping up her back. The kunoichi's body was now completely encased in a rubber suit. Naruto then grabbed her forearm, bending it at the elbow. A belt that she hadn't noticed was attached to the forearm of the suit. The blonde man tightened his belt tightly, keeping the girl's wrist pressed against his shoulder. He had already grabbed her other wrist when Hinata spoke. "What are you doing, Naruto-kun?" she exclaimed. Ignoring her remark, he finished bandaging the other wrist. Naruto then turned to her feet. Her calf was bent back until it hit the top of her thigh. Another strap attached to the suit was wrapped around the ankle, holding it so that the heel was firmly pressed against the buttock. He quickly fastened her other leg before stepping back to admire the beauty in his rubber clothes. "How exciting!" Uzumaki thought with a grin. Lying on the floor, Hinata tried to move. But in the end, with belts, she could only swing her elbows and knees. "Why, Naruto-kun? I can't move!" A note of panic began to appear in the voice of the former Hyuga. The girl was about to open her mouth to scream, but then Naruto put a gag in her mouth. Taken by surprise, Hinata was unable to resist the O-ring, which caused her jaw to slowly part. Naruto had to shove the metal into her mouth before it finally slid behind her teeth. Now all her exclamations were muffled. The blonde man tightened the straps of the gag, fastening them behind her head. Naruto patted his wife's head. "Good girl, Hina," he muttered with a smile. She could only respond with a muffled moan. The gag forced her mouth wide open, stretching her muscles until they threatened to convulse. Naruto then began to pull the fluffy suit over the black rubber that the girl was wrapped in. The material was similar to the one on Hinata, but with some minor differences. The costume was covered with a short layer of soft fur. First, he threw the fluffy material over her tied legs. The legs of the suit were designed for the girl's shortened limbs, and each ended with a rubber pad. Naruto had to lift and support his wife until her belly and chest were under a layer of fur. Then, each of her hands slid into its holes. Just like her legs, they were shortened to fit snugly against her folded arms, with rubber padding for each. Not hands, but front paws, Naruto corrected himself. Hinata groaned as Naruto zipped his fur suit. A strip of Velcro hid the zipper under the fur. Naruto paused for a second to run his hands along his wife's back. He liked to feel her fur. It was so soft. Like a real dog, he thought. Good girl, Hina, you were such a good girl. I just need you to hold out a little longer, and we'll be done, Naruto said, running his hand over her head. The girl could only whine in response. He grinned. I'll take it as a yes. Her hands slid down between her spread legs. A hole in the fur suit revealed a hidden zipper with a rubber lining. Hinata moved under Naruto's grip as her most intimate parts were revealed. He was amazed at the sight of her wet hole. It took all his willpower not to take her right here and now. Later, he consoled himself. The girl screamed and tried to break free from the grip. At that moment, Naruto shoved the tip of the lube bottle up her ass. Hinata tried to break free, but in vain. The blonde man held her tightly to his stomach with one free hand. After making sure that a generous amount of grease had been applied, he took out the bottle. Before finally removing the bottle, he splashed a hefty portion on her anus ring. Naruto took a want the uncensored 18+ part. $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Out of the box. He began to press the tip of want the uncensored 18+ part. $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Into her ass. HNNH. Hinata let out a heavy moan through her gag. Even with the lubricant, Naruto had to work hard to insert the cork into its tight hole. Stop resisting, dear, it will only hurt more, he said through clenched teeth. She clearly did not listen to his advice, since every centimeter was a battle of wills for her. Kunoichi desperately squeezed her muscles, trying to get rid of the strange object, while Naruto tensed his muscles to push the plug deeper. But it was only a matter of time. He was able to slowly make the cork slip away despite all the resistance. Hinata whimpered pitifully in despair. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. She continued to cry and whine. Exhausted by the struggle, Naruto sat down on the floor. He watched the heaving of his beloved's chest, entangled in layers of rubber and fur. It was a strangely soothing sight. Naruto lazily began to play with her new tail. More than half a meter long, it was made of a soft rubber material that helped maintain its rigid shape. Every movement of his hand made the cork move inside Hinata. She whimpered pitifully again. He slowly rose to his feet, walking around his bound wife. Okay, Hinata, the rest is over. It's time to get up, girl. Hinata moaned as he slipped his hand under her chest and stomach. Naruto slowly lifted her up until her legs were underneath her. Then he gently lowered her onto her shortened limbs. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Naruto tied 2 straps around her head on the sides. Then he fastened the third strap that ran from her new nose above her head to secure it to the other straps. The mask was covered in blue-black fur that covered her cheeks and highlighted a black dog nose at the end of her muzzle. Naruto then tightened the strap under her chin. Oh! Hinata screamed as the ring gag dug into her lips. Naruto then pulled a fur hood over her head. It completely hid the brunette's hair under it, and had 2 additions. 2 erect puppy ears that proudly stuck up. As soon as Hinata moved her head slightly, Her ears began to flutter slightly. The blonde stepped back, admiring his work. The creature in front of him could easily be mistaken for a dog at first glance. At least, if you don't look closely. The fluffy suit now completely hid her. It seemed black fur ran along her tail and covered her back and shoulders. The same innocent black fur covered her head and mask. The underbelly and legs were covered with soft cream-colored fur. Naruto began to stroke his head and neck. Hinata fidgeted under his caresses, making her tail wag back and forth. "Good girl, Hina. Wag your tail for your master." Naruto felt her tremble under his hands. He tried to rub her stomach well. A passionate moan escaped her mouth as he paid special attention to her chest. Naruto reached down her back until he wrapped his arms around her. The jerk of the tail caused the new puppy Uzumaki to growl. "He's already getting into the role," he thought. Naruto reached down until his fingers found the wet spot they were looking for. He felt the girl tense after the first touch of his fingers. However, she wasn't ready for his next move. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Hinata let out a loud crying moan. Ignoring her embarrassment, Naruto knelt down in front of her again. "You're so. I think you might be in heat. Be careful, maybe I'll send you to the Inuzuka, to divorce." Naruto chuckled as his wife's eyes widened. His fingers went to her open mouth, sliding past the ring gag. With her mouth open, she had no choice but to lick his fingers and taste everything. Only when the blonde man was satisfied did he remove his fingers. Naruto picked up the last object in front of Hinata's eyes so that she could see it. Her lavender eyes, the last human trait she had left, stared at the collar in her husband's hands. He lazily ran his hand through her fur. "You can see that I'm prepared." Looking closer, she saw that she now had a metal tag in the shape of a bone attached to her collar, on which Hina was engraved in large letters. "This collar contains a small fuinjutsu with genjutsu in. Thanks to it, you'll be an ordinary dog for everyone." Naruto grinned and began to wrap the collar around the girl's neck. The suit itself, although it looks like rubber, is actually compressed chakra. All the Biju helped to create it. Appreciate it. The blonde man raised his finger. It also masks chakra and disrupts its flow. As long as you're in it, you can't use chakra at all, and for all censors, you'll just be a dog with a slightly higher concentration of chakra. Hinata's eyes filled with tears. It dawned on her that she had been turned into a dog. Hina couldn't resist, her head drooping in shame. Naruto fastened the collar tightly so that the girl could feel his constant presence. With a click, Naruto attached the leash to the collar ring. He yanked, and the girl was forced to look up at him. The big pleading puppy eyes, the only reminder of who she was, stared back at him. "Come on, Hina, we still have a lot to do," Naruto said and pulled the leash once more. He headed for the door, and Hinata was forced to hobble after him. Hinata moved slowly, constantly falling from one side to the other. While walking, the tail also began to move. Because of this, the brunette constantly sobbed through the gag. Her eyes were red and swollen with tears, and a long string of saliva stretched from her mouth and dripped onto the floor. When Naruto reached the stairs, he picked Hinata up in his arms. With one hand he held her under her chest, and the other under her. "WMMM!" Hinata shouted through the gag, tears flowing from her eyes again. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. The blonde man went down the stairs and lowered his wife to the floor. Her legs immediately separated, and she fell to the floor. Hinata was breathing heavily, trying to come to her senses. "And you're having fun here," a familiar voice said. Hinata quickly rose to her shortened limbs and turned to the source of the voice. She saw another Naruto smiling cheerfully. In one hand, he held a pair of bowls on which Hinata's new name could be written. At his feet was a large bag, judging by the package, with dog food. Kunoichi stood with her back turned to the original Naruto. Because of the suit, she unconsciously lifted her rubber backside. The blonde's gaze could not tear itself away from his wife in the middle of all this rubber. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. When Hinata came to, she found herself lying on a small rug near the sofa. Her suit was completely covered, so as soon as she moved, she felt friction on her button. She looked up and saw Naruto sitting next to her in a chair, watching TV. Hinata tried to tell her husband to let her go. I'm already awake, Hina. The blonde smiled. You're probably hungry? Hinata really felt hungry. Naruto got up from his chair and headed to the kitchen. Hinata had to hobble after him. With each step, the cork made her uncomfortable. Because of this, she came to the kitchen rather slowly. When she arrived, she saw that Naruto was finishing pouring the food she had seen from the clone into the bowl. The bowl was red with the inscription Hina. Next to it was a blue bowl filled with water. Come on, don't be shy, Naruto said, seeing that Hinata didn't want to approach. Hinata no longer knew what to do, but at that moment the phone rang. Din bell dil dong. Naruto immediately went into the hallway to open the door. Hinata was left alone, panicking at the sight of being seen. Voices came from the corridor. Here, they're coming back. Thank you, Hanabi. Did they cause trouble? No, they're just lovely. Goodbye then. Hinata is gone for a while, I'll keep an eye on them. Bye, Naruto. The sound of the door closing was heard. And after him the ringing voice of the blonde. Children, he said to Boruto and Himawari. I have a gift for you. A gift? What? Himawari and Boruto shouted. Chuckling at the children, Naruto took them to the kitchen. There they saw Hinata, who still had not moved. There was horror in her eyes that the children would see her like this. Hooray! Dog! The children said in unison and ran to Hinata. They immediately began to stroke her and run around. Why do they behave like this? The brunette thought, frightened. Then she remembered what Naruto had said about Genjutsu. This calmed her down a little. My friend left for a while and asked to look after her dog. So she's spending the night with us tonight, Naruto explained. The children were a little upset that the dog was not for good, but they cheered up when they heard that they would have a dog for at least a day. What's her name? Boruto asked, stroking Hinata near her tail. She blushed a lot from her son's touch, and did not know where to look. Her name is Hina, Naruto said and pointed to the pendant. Everything is written here. Looks like Mom. Himawari tilted her head. Where's your mother? She asked another question. She's helping my friend, so you're with Hina and me today. Hooray! Two children's mouths came out. She turned around to start playing with Hinata. But first, give her something to eat, Naruto finished, which cooled the children's ardor. They all turned to Hinata and began to watch carefully. The children looked especially closely. They even jumped on the spot. Hinata had no choice but to start eating so that the children would not suspect anything. She turned to the bowl and looked at the contents. There was food in the form of pellets. She saw one in the nearest store. She bent down and tried to take one pellet. But then she was prevented by the expansion ring of the gag. Hinata couldn't close her jaw, so she stuck out her tongue and picked up the pellet. When it was in her mouth, the brunette immediately swallowed it. The mask and gag got in the way, but if they hadn't been there, Hinata would have grimaced. The pellet tasted like cardboard with a slight hint of chicken flavor. However, while she was being stared at, the former Hyuga was forced to continue eating it. When her throat began to dry from the food, she turned to the bowl of water. Because of the gag, she could only lap like a dog. When Hinata finished almost an hour later, Naruto allowed the children to play with her. With cries of joy, they began to rush around her, stroking in different places. Then they dragged her into the living room to continue playing. Hinata stopped and looked at her husband pleadingly. Go play, Hina. Naruto nodded his head in the direction where their children had fled. Hinata lowered her head and crawled into the living room. Over the past time, she managed to get used to it, so she moved quite tolerably well in the suit. The tail was waving from side to side, reacting to the smallest movements of the brunette. Until the end of the day, the children played with Hinata, and she diligently played the role of a dog. As a result, she really began to perceive herself as a dog. She was already running after the things that the children threw with great enthusiasm, obeying commands and giving her voice. When Boruto and Himawari began to yawn in exhaustion, she escorted them to their rooms. During the day, she even got used to climbing the stairs. When Hinata returned to the living room, she met the blonde's satisfied gaze. Hina, come to me, Naruto commanded, and Hinata automatically crawled to his feet and sat down on the floor. Only then did she realize what she had done, and the visible part of her face turned bright red. Chuckling, Naruto silently headed to his room. Hinata crawled after her husband. Once in his bedroom, the blonde man began to take off his wife's suit. When Hinata was freed from her shackles, she began to chase chakra through her body to get rid of the numbness in her limbs. After the discomfort disappeared, she looked at her husband. The latter picked her up in his arms and went to the bed. When Hinata was on the bed, she pulled her husband to her and bit his lips. After a whole day with a gag, she kissed passionately, clumsily, but with feeling. Naruto began to trace all the curves of her adjacent body with his hands. The blonde man kissed her on the lips, going down to her neck. The girl breathed heavily from kisses when he reached her chest. Then, a heavy moan escaped her lips. Hinata's nipples hardened, and her husband continued to go lower and lower. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. And you have become more courageous. Naruto noticed the change in his wife. Naruto-kun. Hinata paused and switched places with her husband. Kunoichi bit into his lips and kissed him gently but passionately. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. Hinata lay down next to him and asked, Well, did you like it? Did you like your bitch? Very, Naruto replied, and only then did he notice how Hinata called herself. He grinned. I liked my bitch. He leaned on top of her and continued to kiss his wife. His wand was strong again and ready to continue. Want the uncensored 18+ part? $4 per month on Patreon, 380+ hot episodes. After that, Hinata collapsed on the bed. Naruto hugged her and smiled blissfully. You know, Naruto-kun, Hinata said quietly, starting to run her finger over her husband's chest. I probably don't mind going in breeding. Cough? What?